Well, I'm glad you're here watching my video on YouTube. The fact is, I don't know how long this will be up, since YouTube has decided to start censoring me and pulling down my videos. But don't worry, you can watch this video on rumble.com/RandPaul, where I post all of my content. Love to see you over at rumble.com.
Joining me now, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator, I mean, look, it was in the middle of COVID and all of that, but it's still a stunning data point in the middle of this attempted spendorama that Biden's trying to pull out of his hat.
Yeah, I've been watching the trend for several years now, and it's actually why my wife and I wrote our book, The Case Against Socialism, because we were alarmed that the trend lines were going up with people wanting more and more so-called free things, wanting to experiment with socialism. But I think now we've seen, 8, 9 months of big government socialism coming from Biden, and people are starting to understand that there are consequences. One of the consequences is prices are rising. We've had the highest increase now in the cost of living for Social Security, but the question is, will it keep up with prices? What if prices go up 10% next year? What happens to those on Social Security and those of lower wage income? So yes, I think the results are coming in. Big government socialism doesn't work, and people are unhappy with it. But this is important for people to know, but they also need to know the history of socialism, that every time it's been tried in world history, it always ends up with state-sponsored authoritarianism and violence. So it's not a pleasant system to live in, but it's also economically a terrible system if you want to try to get ahead for you and your family.
Yeah, good luck. And speaking of big government, Senator Paul, now those of us who are concerned about the treatment of some of the January 6th defendants, we've been dismissed and kind of laughed at, but now a judge is demanding an investigation. U.S. District Judge Royce C. Lamberth of Washington acted after finding that jail officials failed to turn over information needed to approve surgery recommended 4 months ago for a January 6th Capitol riot defendant's broken wrist. Senator, fairly appalling, your response.
Look, my initial impression of January 6th is people who are fighting with the police shouldn't have, and people who entered shouldn't have. But I keep hearing all of these cases. I met a woman this weekend who's a journalist who has podcasts and has been on television. She's on a no-fly list and was yanked off of a plane, never been charged. But this is the kind of stuff happening. I met a young man who works in Washington in his early 20s. He's been fired, uprooted, and now, has lost his job. The pictures of him as he's wandering through, walking past some policemen who never tell him to leave. Now, I'm not saying he did was right to walk in when he shouldn't have, but he's walking in. He's not even yelling, talking to anybody. He's just curious and walking around, and he's sort of swept up by this crowd. So for justice not to differentiate between people who sort of wandered in and people who were fighting with the police, there really is a big difference. And I am worried about what we're doing to these people. And I can tell you, for one, that the mob that attacked my wife and I, that bloodied a policeman and caused a laceration above his eye, nothing happened to them. No investigation of how they got to Washington, who paid for their hotel rooms, who's paying for all the stuff they're doing. Nothing.
Thank you for mentioning that. That is absolutely appalling after what happened to you. And meanwhile, the Biden administration, that we know they're not interested in accountability. Instead, they end up rewarding bad actors, Senator, because we just learned the administration has restored former FBI Deputy Director Andy McCabe's pension. The settlement deal reached this week removes McCabe's FBI record, any references to having been fired, restores his retirement money. Senator, we just had this Marine Lieutenant Colonel Scheller. Looks like he's going to suffer, but I guess McCabe, no.
Yeah, so rewarding McCabe, who took the position of the FBI and used that position to go after a political candidate, Donald Trump, he's now rewarded with his job back. But you have the Department of Justice with Merrick Garland now saying that if you're a mom and you're a little bit irate about what they're teaching your kids at school or the fact that they're mandating them to be vaccinated, if you are irate and upset and raise your voice, you just might be a domestic terrorist. Former President George Bush chiming in and comparing moms at these rallies and at these school board meetings to domestic terrorists. It is awful, but you need to be aware that your government can listen to every phone call, can discover everything about you, yank you off a plane, prevent you from flying, and that is not the America that I want to live in, and we all need to push back.
Senator Paul, thank you for leading on this again.